My next guest, Angelo Keely, has been involved in nutrition, functional fitness, yoga, and meditation for over 20 years. He's the co-founder of Kion, a functional food company dedicated to supporting active lifestyles through pure energy enhancing solutions. As CEO, his goal is to build the best company possible for everyone it touches. He believes seeking out fun is one of the keys to a great life that hangs on a ring of integrity in everything they do. Angelo, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Heather. It's fun to be here.
It's so exciting to have you. I want to jump right into the beginning. So you were raised in Austin, Texas by parents in the health food business. And one of the most important supplements you say that your mom gave you as a small child isn't the vitamin C or the vitamin D for healthy bodies and healthy bones. In your house, it was aminos. Can we just jump right into that?
Yeah, like why that was?
Yes.
Well, I mean, again, I actually was really lucky, I think, to get raised in a family where natural food was really important. Yes. And whole food and really trying to make decisions around nutrition. And if those could solve issues before maybe having to use drugs or having to use other more, serious interventions. So my parents chose a protein-based diet that was unique at that time. They chose a pescatarian diet. And so what that meant was we ate dairy and eggs and fish, but we didn't eat poultry or beef or pork or other things like that. I now eat all meat, but as a child, that's what my parents were focused on. And because of that, and lots of times, in our meals, we didn't always have dairy, eggs, or fish. And it was plant protein sometimes. They were aware of that. We talked about that. And with plant proteins, you actually need to combine them oftentimes, not with all plant proteins, but most plant proteins need to combine to get a complete essential amino acid profile, meaning to get an actual high quality protein that will do what you want protein to do in your body, which we can get more into. But my parents knew about that. We talked about that. And so we sometimes took amino acids in and around exercise or in and around meals that were deficient in complete proteins. My parents also gave me things like vitamin C. And they gave me echinacea when I was sick and other stuff. But amino acids was one that, it was an important thing. And one I actually remember taking as a kid because I remember the way it felt. I remember when I would take it, I could actually feel it.
Really? Oh, that's amazing. I mean, because a lot of kids get, kind of fed supplements, and I don't know as a child if they really are that in tune with it, unless maybe they have a health problem or something like that. So I just want to back up again to your parents. So one of the things that you said was kind of your parents in your household was using food not only to supplement your body, but kind of as medicine and as a way to heal you before you got into antibiotics and things like that in the house. I just want to touch base on that really quick because I'm guessing you're a little bit younger than me, but we're probably talking about, the early 80s and stuff like that when you were maybe even the late 70s when you were experiencing that, which is very alternative to a lot of people at that time, but not as alternative today, which is really exciting because integrative nutrition is really a part of a lot of people's language now. And so I just wanted to mention that your parents were way ahead of their time.
Yeah, it's cool. Again, I was really lucky. I think that they were, they clearly had gotten exposed to those ideas in the 70s, and I was raised in the early 80s. And it's a very unique experience. I feel really lucky to have had it. And, part of it, I think since then, maybe some of the things they thought and believed and did, we since have uncovered that maybe they don't make sense or don't totally work, but a lot of it really does. And a lot of it can help one to not just like heal yourself, but promote health and overall longevity so that you can avoid different types of illness and injury and fatigue, all types of different types of things you can avoid if you simply keep your body in working order.
Put that in a quote and put it on a billboard, people, because we really are in control of our own destiny, of our own health, right? We can reverse our DNA. Like, we're destined sometimes through our DNA to specific things. And by really paying attention to those and using, food as a way to heal that and dig deeper into that is really something that we could have a whole nother podcast on. But I love that. It's a really good segue about aminos, like I think most people have heard obviously amino acids and they know that they're essential, and that maybe not everybody know that we have nine essential amino acids in our bodies, right? But let's just talk a little bit about the basics of amino acids and why your mother felt that a protein, kind of heavy diet, and how aminos play a role in proteins. Because not everybody maybe understands that. So just give us a quick little foundation on that.
So where I would start is just what is protein and why do we eat it? And if we all can kind of have that general frame, then the rest will make a lot of sense.
Good.
So there are oftentimes when people talk about nutrition, you will hear the words micronutrients and macronutrients. And micronutrients refer to things like vitamins and minerals. And macronutrients, so vitamins and minerals would be like vitamin C and vitamin D and magnesium and things like that. And the macronutrients are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. But the thing is that protein is quite different from carbohydrates and fat. Oftentimes in nutrition debates, you always hear people arguing about carbohydrates or fat. Should I go ketogenic or low carb, or do carbs good for me or bad for me? But what I will say in kind of simple terms is that the primary role of both carbohydrates and fat in a human diet is energy. So if you think about your body like a house, if you want to run your dishwasher and your laundry machine and the lights and watch TV and do any of these types of things, you have to get energy into the house. And so you get it from an energy grid, or you have solar panels, or you could, if you're in a storm, you could connect a generator and burn gasoline. They're all just different types of energy that get pumped into your house. Carbohydrates and fat are similar. You consume carbohydrates, say, carbs can be in a potato or, vegetables, all different types of sources. Fats will oftentimes be in, animal sources, but also plant sources, avocados, et cetera. You eat these things, and when you digest them, they get shared to your body in such a way that you can actually burn them as fuel. They get converted into this thing called ATP. It doesn't really matter what it's called, but it's like an innate energy source in your body that you burn and use. And that's why you eat them. And if you eat too much carbohydrates and fat, then what happens is your body stores it as fat. So when we get, overweight in terms of having excess body fat, if I have 10 more pounds of body fat than I think I need, it's because I ate typically more carbohydrates and fat than I really needed in that given moment. And my body stored it in case there's a later period where I get really hungry and I don't have access to food, and I can live off of those fat stores. And again, the fat stores get converted to energy. So that's what fat and carbs do. That's their role.
I mean, it's so beautifully put that, I think we forget sometimes, you guys, that our bodies need fuel, and food is that fuel. And I love that you break it up into the house, and you also broke it up into different ways to get the energy into the house, because not all energy for humans is created equal. And the energy you might get from a plant source protein, like an avocado, cashews, nuts, beans, legumes, is a little different than a protein source you would get from an animal source, like a meat, like a poultry or a red meat. Isn't that true? And can you talk a little bit about the difference in energy sources and why they may power us differently, or why they have to be ingested certain ways to be the most beneficial? We've heard that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The clarification I would offer, though, is that protein is not really an energy source. So fat and carbs are this energy source. Protein is actually fundamentally different. It
essential
can be,
for us.
Yeah, it can be used as an energy. You can actually convert protein into a carb-like substance in the body, and you can burn it like energy. But that's not really why we eat it. The reason why we eat protein is actually to rebuild the proteins in our body. And I'll explain that in more detail.
Good.
So going back to the house analogy, you have to get energy in to run the house, right? But at the same time, the house is actually made up of things, right? It's made up of wood that goes into maybe the hardwood floor, or, polyester that makes a carpet, or wool that makes a carpet. There's materials that go into sheetrock. There's all these different types of materials that make up that actual house. And the same as your house can start to wear out. If you open and close a door over and over and over again, the hinge might start to wear out. Or if you walk over carpet over and over again, or you have a cat or a dog that scrapes it, right? It starts to wear out. And so what do you need to do? You need to replace that carpet. You need to replace those raw materials. Our body is the same, but our body needs to be replaced even more frequently. So in our bodies, many people are familiar, like over half of us is water. That is accurate. of the part that's not water, the part that's solid mass, right? Over half of that is protein. So all of your vital organs, your heart, your kidneys, your liver, your spleen, but also things like all of your lean muscle tissue, things like your connective tissue, your skin, your hair, your nails, and things that are less obviously physical, but they are physical substances. Your hormones and the enzymes in your body are proteins. And all of these proteins, the way that proteins work in nature and they work in our body this way, is they only basically remain functional for a certain period of time. And when they're no longer super functional, they break down. They actually, each little individual protein breaks apart. So if I look down at my arm, it's kind of hard to imagine, but I know that the skin in my arm is made up of millions of proteins. And underneath that, there's some muscle tissue. And if I look into my chest, like there'd be heart, all these things, there's millions of proteins. Each one of those little proteins, after it no longer functions as well as it used to. And every single protein is different in different types of tissue. It breaks apart. And inside, like when it breaks apart, what becomes noticed is that it was made up of these 20 amino acids. Right. And some of them can be reused. So if you're going to remodel your house, you might like rip up some of the hardwood floor and like, oh, this is actually still pretty good. We could put it in this other smaller room. Like, oh, this stuff's junk. We have to throw it away. Similarly, some of the amino acids can't be reused and you pee them out. They get converted into urea and you pee them out. The other is like, oh, I can reuse this and I can actually help rebuild some new enzyme or help rebuild some skin tissue, et cetera. But you're short on amino acids. You don't have enough because you just peed some of them out. So where do you get more? That is why you eat protein. When you eat quinoa or soy as a plant source, or you eat chicken breast or fish, inside of these food sources, there's protein. And when you digest the protein in your body, you break up the little amino acids in your digestive system. They go into your blood and they get distributed all throughout your body to help rebuild your body. So the reason why you eat protein is because if you do not, you will not be able to rebuild your organs. You won't have enzymes. You won't have hormones. You won't have neurotransmitters come from amino acids. You won't have any of these things. So I think it's a really fundamental key component for people to understand. The reason why you eat protein is it's very different than why you eat carbohydrates and fat. Right. It's not really purely for energy. Only like in a more of like a very
building blocks.
Yeah, it's actually to rebuild your body. Yeah. So that said, though, yes, there's different. Whether you get that protein from plants or from animal sources, it can have a very different impact on how that plays out in your body.
Right. And so you need to get a job over at the Integrative Institute of Nutrition where I went to school because you'd be an amazing instructor.
Oh, thank you.
So when I was going to school for nutrition and I learned, I always say first we're water, second we're protein. And, but I think the way you broke it down is really beautiful because energy, I think a lot of people say, I can't have carbs. And I'm like, if you don't have any carbohydrates in your body, you can't think. Your brain has to run on carbs. We need that for energy. But protein, I'm glad that you made the real differential when I was talking about the house, because protein really is the foundation. It's muscle, it's your skeletal system, muscle skeletal, all of that. And then you talk about the storage that, it increases storage when you're taking protein. You can store that in your muscles for later. You store that in your tissue for later, right? And you can actually, you can store amino acids in your tissues, right? But if I'm eating pumpkin, let's say, because it's got some protein in it, or hemp, let's say I'm throwing that in my protein shake, I'm not necessarily getting a full amino acid profile out of that particular protein source. So does it break down faster? Can you tell the difference between when you have an amino acid that's full and an amino acid that's not completely full? A protein that's got a full structure. I'm not saying it properly, but you have to say it for me.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm trying to say?
No, I get what you're asking.
Complete and incomplete. I remembered.
Yeah.
Complete and incomplete.
Yeah. So now we've got the framework. Carbs and fat are mostly for energy, proteins really for rebuilding the proteins in our body. So with that idea now, we're going to go one layer deeper. And that is in proteins that we eat in our food, they're not all the same. So I said there's these 20 amino acids that make up protein. I briefly mentioned it. It's the same 20 amino acids that make up the protein like in our muscle, right? Or in our skin, right? But these amino acids that will exist in beans or rice or beef or chicken or eggs, They actually come in different combinations. So if you were to break apart the structure of a rice protein, it has different proportions of different amino acids. They're not all the same. It's like you can make a brick out of different types of sand and different types of dirt and different amounts of water, et cetera. So there's different amounts. So, and maybe different sizes of sand, et cetera. So when you are trying to decide, well, is there a better type of protein, right? Like, is there a protein that's going to work better? There's a lot of different ways you would evaluate a protein. But if the main reason that we're eating protein for the protein's sake, and I'm not saying like why we're eating the chicken or why we're eating the beans, but if we're wanting the protein from the chicken or we're wanting the protein from the soy, the reason that we want it is because inside of that protein, there are essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. There's 9 essential. And when you eat a protein that has a sufficient amount of those 9 essential amino acids and they're digestible, which is a whole nother component. So like, not all protein is equally digestible. And I don't mean like, oh, do I like the way it makes my stomach feel? I mean, like literally, can the enzymes in our body, when we eat the protein, break it apart and get the amino acids out of it? So you basically want to eat proteins that our bodies can easily break down the protein and get the amino acids. And then secondly, are there high concentrations of these essential amino acids? And the reasons why you want the high concentrations of the essential amino acids is twofold. One is they're called essential because your body can't make them. Like, we must have them. They are essential to our survival, right? And your body can actually make the non-essential. So if you consume the essential, you can make the non-essential. That doesn't mean you want to make your body do that. Like, it's good to eat the non-essential as part of your diet as well, but you must eat the essential. But the more important part about the essential amino acids is that they aren't just the building blocks. Like, so if like my skin tissue, the proteins in my skin, it's made up of essential and non-essential. The essential amino acids are also, if you think about like the house again, they're the guys actually ripping up the old carpet and installing the new carpet. They're actually the workers. They're the chemical messengers that say, hey, this is an old protein. I don't want this old protein anymore. I want to break it down and I want to build a new fresh one. So it actually leads to greater protein synthesis and greater protein turnover if you eat something that's more high in these essential amino acids. And so if you eat lots of proteins that don't have much essential amino acids, or they're not that digestible, you don't get the whole benefit of why you're eating the protein. You're eating the protein to rebuild the skin, to rebuild the hair, to rebuild the muscle, to rebuild the organ tissue. Like, that's why you're doing it. So you need the real concentrated essential amino acids. And so here's the just kind of the facts about food sources is that plant proteins tend to be much lower in essential amino acids, and they tend to be much less digestible. And I'm not trying to like make this a thing about like, oh, I eat quinoa and I like it, but I eat chicken and it's kind of hard on my stomach. What I mean is that you literally don't get as many of the amino acids out of the quinoa as you get from the chicken. Like, that's just the way that it works. And you can Google this and look at, basically the amino acid digestibility scores of different proteins, and it's studied scientifically and it rates. And it's like milk is at the top. Like, whole milk literally has like the best digestibility of the protein, and it has the highest quantity of these essential amino acids. So yeah. So first question is, how digestible is it? Second is it high in the essential amino acids? And then the third question I would ask too is, how many other calories am I getting? Because it does matter. If I have to eat a ton of calories to get the amount of protein that I need, then I'm getting all of this additional energy that I need to burn off in order to get the key amount of protein that I need just to rebuild my body. So that is why bacon is not a very efficient protein source. Yes, the protein in bacon has the essential amino acids, but it's surrounded in fat. It's very caloric for the amount. Similarly, if you look at like beans and rice, if you combine them, you can get an okay, decent profile, but there's a lot of calories from the carbohydrates. So I think it's like, you kind of have to make decisions. If you want to move a lot less, but get sufficient amount of protein, I would tend more towards animal proteins, dairy, eggs, meats. If you're open to moving a ton, like I think endurance athletes, for example, if you can burn thousands of calories a day, it can make sense to just like, I'm just eating tons of plant foods all the time, but you have a very high calorie, you need to process a lot of calories. And I think in any case, eating like, it'd be similar, like really fatty meats. If you want to eat really fatty meats, you need to move more because there's a ton of calories in the fat in the meat,
100%.
Yeah.
I love, and the bottom line is, and why I wanted you to get into some of the detail is because I think sometimes people forget why we eat. You know what I mean? Why we eat is like we have to survive, but it's kind of bigger than that. And how we change, right? So we change as we age, and some of the things in our bodies change, like you talk about. But also, I think why are you listening to this podcast about, nutrition and health? Is your diet perfect? Is your weight perfect? Do you feel great? Is your energy level fantastic? Do your skin, hair, and nails glow and you feel fantastic? Well, then you're eating a good diet that works for your lifestyle. But if you have issues like I'm feeling sluggish, or I've got this weight gain, or after menopause, I can't think anymore. That's why people like you and I have come to you even more than me, because you're the scientist behind it. I work with a scientist on some of my, food supplements, but we create these things because human beings need shortcuts, so to speak, and they also need support for certain goals that we have in our life, right? So before premenopausal, when I was like in my 30s and 40s, I was mountaineering. I was running the New York Marathon. I was doing a ton of active things. And the way I ate was different. When I was postmenopausal and the pandemic hit and my body slowed down, boy, the way I was eating had to change. But maybe I didn't know how to supplement all of what you just said. You know what I mean? To get a full amino acid profile to really support my diet in the way that I need to as I teach myself new habits. And that's where supplements come in. That's where you can, and they're called supplements for a reason, because they are there to supplement your diet, right? Now I'm preaching from my little soapbox, but I want to turn it back over to you. So I want to talk a little bit about, how do amino acids impact people at different ages, 20s, 30s, 40s? And, how can they improve if you're looking for energy, or if you're looking for weight loss, or your body composition, isn't what you want it to be, or you want to grow your muscle mass? I mean, I just want to give you a personal story before I turn it over to you about me using your aminos. So me using your aminos as a supplement, I had a personal best at the gym. And so
that's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. So I want to tell you that so I can turn it now over to you to talk about, I didn't know I needed to supplement my diet, or that it would help me to supplement my diet with aminos, until I started to listen to you and learn about you. And I was like, hey, let me try it. And I had a personal best in the gym. So how did that increase my muscle mass over time, by adding it to my diet? And then just take it away, because I just left you a big, long runway. But
I love it though.
Good, juicy thing.
I love, yeah, there's lots of good stuff in there. So if I don't get back to all of it, just remind me of it.
I'll get you back.
Yeah. And first of all, I would just say, I think of myself more as like an educator than a scientist. There's like very leading academic researchers that are studying this in general. And like, I see it as my mission to help translate that information and make it more available to more people, to just empower normal people like us to just make better decisions about what we eat.
You're just one step closer to the scientist than me. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. And so, I think I agree too that I think the most important thing is to try to eat whole food meals and have a whole food diet. Like if you ask any like a legit, I think, researcher on this, it's like, if you eat real fruits and vegetables and real sources of protein, and, kind of minimize the amount of processed foods you eat, then, you're heading in the right direction. That said, as we age, there are changes to our body. And as we age, maybe the amount of these certain types of whole foods like don't work as much for us anymore. And we need to switch them out for these ones. Or maybe we need to eat more frequently or less frequently, or, there's a lot of different ways that we can adapt our diet to find what's going to work well for us. And I think one more maybe element about protein that I would introduce is when and how we eat protein has a very big impact on us. And actually supplements have a very different, distinct role that they can play that I think people don't often realize. They just think, oh, protein powder, if I have, 20 grams of your plant protein powder, it's the same as eating, 20 grams of this other, of beans and rice or something. Right. And it's not. And I'll help explain why that is. So I'm going to give the example of some studies, and they're more related to meat, but they would be transferable in a very similar way to plant-based diets. Right. So If you
I,
eat,
by the way, eat everything too.
okay, great, cool.
Too.
And I'm supportive. I think there's a lot of different ways to be healthy and happy.
For
There's
100%.
not
I
like one. Yeah.
only use plant-based, to be honest, because I don't like whey personally. And so I
Great.
was looking for a supplement out there. And so as an entrepreneur does, when I couldn't find it, I made my own.
Yeah, it's great. That's awesome.
Using
Yeah.
scientists.
So if you eat, this is what research has shown, and this is not my research. This is the protein and amino acid kind of academic circles over studies of the last couple decades. So if you consume 30 grams of beef protein on its own, versus if you have over twice that amount, 70 grams of beef protein, but as part of a mixed meal. So you're having a steak, like that's actually 70 grams. So about 12 ounces of total meat, you get 70 grams of protein. That's a big steak, right? Yeah. And you eat it with, broccoli and potatoes and other things. Versus if you eat less than half of that steak, but you eat it on its own, the less than half amount will have a greater impact on protein synthesis than twice the amount as part of a mixed meal. And so I'm going to unpack that some. So what happens is when you eat protein and you digest it and you get these essential amino acids that go into your body, that go into your blood, the higher the amount of total essential amino acids in your blood all at once is what then indicates to the body to say, hey, let's go rebuild new proteins. So you want more of the essential amino acids in your blood at once. And so what happens is if you're eating the meat on its own, it simply is able to be broken down and the essential amino acids hit the blood more quickly and in a more condensed format, and it'll have a higher peak concentration than even if you ate twice the amount. Now, I'm not telling people then like you should be breaking up all your meals and eat everything separately, but I'm just illustrating like that's.
Well, it depends on your goal. If you're a bodybuilder in the gym, you know what I mean?
There you go. There you go.
You're gonna, yes, I think it's very important. It's wonderful information.
Or if you're aging, and I think I'll get to some more nuance around the difference between, say, a 20-year-old body, a 40-year-old body, a 50-year-old body, and an 80-year-old body. They're quite different in the way that they work with protein. But I'm giving this example for young, healthy adults. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, and these studies are more around whey protein powders because that's typically what's studied, but I think you would have similar results, probably not quite to the impact, but similar results. If I take a whey protein powder and I have the same, and I kind of equalize it gram for gram to the beef, it is going to have a 3-fold increase in the amount of essential amino acids that go into the blood versus that piece of beef. The protein powder is having a way greater impact. And I don't know the exact amount, like I don't know your exact formulation of your plant protein powder and what the amino acid profiles are, but I would bet it's similar. It's a much greater impact than even the meat on its own. And that's because the essential amino acids are immediately available and they hit a concentration level much higher. So if you're trying to just like supplement with a little bit more protein throughout the day, it might make more sense to have that protein shake than just have one more piece of like beef jerky, if you like protein powder, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a way to supplement, which you're saying.
Supplement,
and it's not, don't take away the diet that you're eating and only eat shakes.
Yeah.
To add
it's a way.
What you're looking for.
If you're trying to have these higher levels of daily protein intake because you want to live really vibrantly, right?
Yes.
Now here's even more interesting. An essential amino acid supplement, if formulated correctly, and we can get into what that kind of formulation is. It's all, I can be very transparent of exactly what you would want to look for in a brand. And I'm not just trying to like sell my company.
I would just tell them to just use yours because you do the research and you put, and the scientists, I didn't put the stuff in but you put it all in there because you know it works. And that's why we're here to help. That's why it's an aid to getting you to your goal across your finish line, right?
Yeah. So with an essential amino acid supplement, it gram for gram has 3 times the impact as a protein powder. So an essential amino acid, think about it as like super protein powder, way better than protein powder. Yeah. I mean, it does what protein, it does the exact same thing as why you want to eat protein powder, but it's 3 times as effective for a young adult. Now, here's what's crazy. If you compare it for an older person, for women in their 60s, where these studies have been done, it's over 6 times the impact as the protein powder. And that is because, and I'll unpack that some, every single decade, starting at about 30, our ability to digest the protein diminishes some And our sensitivity to those concentrations of the amino acids in our blood also diminishes. You just think like when you're 20, your body's thinking like, oh, I want to build, get stronger, run faster, be fitter. When you're like, you're perimenopausal, for example, right? Like your body's going through all these other changes and hormonal and ovulation changes. It's like the goal is not like, I want to be, as fit as I possibly can to bear a bunch of children, right? It's like it's in a different phase of life, right? If things are shifting, and then
been there, done that.
Yeah, and then after menopause, right? It's a different phase, and so your body is simply not focused on trying to like build and maintain all this muscle, and so it actually becomes reduced, like how sensitive you are to those amino acids. Your body just doesn't prioritize it. That said, when you take an essential amino acid supplement, if you enhance the amount of certain amino acids like leucine, isoleucine, valine, lysine, and the fact that your body doesn't have to digest it and it just goes right to the blood, that is why it is so much more powerful than a protein powder for someone in their 60s. And I would say we don't have studies for every decade, but I would say it's about 3 times the impact when you're 30, 4 times when you're 40, 5 times when you're 50, 6 times when you're 60.
So it was 5 times for me, like literally, because I think I've been taking the aminos for 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks. And I am not taking them. I'm not on a protein powder right now. I really use it as a supplement when I'm like not eating enough and I know I'm not getting, or I'm working out more. I have a high mountain climb to supplement my world. And, and I also use it for people who are on a weight loss journey as a meal replacement because it's got a full profile. But what you're talking about, I'm postmenopausal, but I was working on the weight. I still had this 10 pounds that just no matter what I did. And I don't think I was willing to be, honestly, I wasn't willing to lay in a pile of sweat on the floor anymore. My body,